will start in several minutes. We are waiting for all of you, all of us here. Okay. Great. Will you join me? Okay, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the workshop on accessible and human-centered public services. Thank you for being interested in our workshop. I'm Anna Ioanishvili, the Deputy Head of International Relations and Legal Cooperation Department at the Ministry of Justice. And I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of the Ministry of Justice of Georgia and the UNDESA. Please.
Hi, welcome everybody. It's good to see the room packed, but sorry if you're having a hard time finding a seat. But thanks for joining us. My name is Victoria Kim. I'm from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and it's really good to see everybody.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Melanie Prudhomme. I am also with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs.
Thank you. So today the governments around the world are facing different expectations that the service delivery should be accessible, efficient, and responsive to people's needs. At the same time, rapid technological change, increasing complexity of public administration, and persistent inequalities remind us that improving services is not only a technical challenge, but it's fundamentally about people. The objective of the workshop is to explore practical approaches and experiences on how governments can design and deliver services that are truly centered on people. And over the course of the next 2 days, we will discuss how to simplify procedures, strengthen integrated public service delivery, promote meaningful participation, and to have the innovations that have the lasting change. This workshop is designed to be highly interactive through panel discussions, audience engagement, questions and answers, and practical exchanges among participants. We hope to create a space for learning and for peer learning and dialogue. We encourage all of you to actively contribute your experiences, challenges, and ideas throughout these sessions.
So tomorrow, for our third session of this workshop after the plenary tomorrow morning, we'll also have a very active hands-on exercise where the participants, meaning all of you, will step into the role of government officials tasked to be designing with a participation strategy for a fictional national policy challenge. So everybody will be divided in teams, and you will make a series of decisions about who to engage, how to engage them, and how citizen input will be used. So as the consequences of their choices unfold, participants will see how different participation approaches shape outcomes such as trust, inclusion, transparency, citizen influence, and representation. Drawing on real-world public participation practices from around the world, the workshop provides a practical, hands-on way to explore what it takes to design meaningful participation. I apologize. Along with, I don't know where I was, I'm sorry. To the meaningful participation processes and the trade-off public servants face when doing so.
So, I hopefully this makes you get more excited about the next, day instead of being intimidated by it. So when we encourage your participation, it's not only for, to make our session, but it's also for you to take away, with your own experience and in your own words as well. So the participation is highly encouraged. I know there are several other workshops that's in parallel, and they're all very interesting. While we do not expect you to be here for full 2 days, it would be very much appreciated if you could, because the one session leads to the another, so it has, we're covering different aspects in 2 full days. Please do come back on time after coffee break, because we do have a coffee break in session as well. So that's it, and we'll get going with our panel.
Thank you. Now we can start with session one. Okay, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, now welcome again to session one of workshop four, entitled to Smart Public Service Delivery, Reducing Procedural Complexity. Um, as governments, we often focus on developing policies, regulations, and programs. However, from the perspective of citizens, what matters most is whether public services are easily to access, easy to understand, and responsive to their needs. Unfortunately, many public services remain burdened by complex procedures, excessive documentation requirements, multiple approval layers, and fragmented processes. While these requirements are often introduced with good intentions, they can create significant barriers for citizens and businesses and disproportionately affect those who are mostly vulnerable. Today, governments have an unprecedented opportunity to rethink the service delivery. Digital technologies, artificial process re-engineering, the data sharing, and innovative service design approaches can help simplify people's interactions with governments. I'm delighted to be joined by three distinguished speakers. Mr. Wu Weineng, please come, Chief Executive Officer of Chandler Governance Group. Dr. Salem Zokbi, the Senior UN University Expert and CADGO Coordinator, and Ms. Sereva Chea, Secretary General of the Digital Government Committee of Cambodia. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we will start with the panel discussion, I would like your participation. We have this tool. Please display the tool, QR code. This is a Slido application especially created for our workshop. There will be, before we begin our discussion, we will now launch two quick polls to better understand your perspectives and experiences. Please scan the QR code and answer two questions. Everybody scans the QR code. Now please display the questions. There are two questions. The question one is, what do you think? What is the biggest barrier people face when accessing public services today? Complex procedures, too many documents, long waiting times, lack of information, or limited digital access? Please take a moment and submit your responses. Okay, and there is also the question number two. Which action would have the greatest impact on improving public service delivery? Simplifying procedures and requirements, expanding digital services, improving data sharing across agencies, strengthening frontline support and assistance, or designing services around citizens' life events? Please also choose your answer. All submitted your responses? Okay, now we can see the results. So the question one, what is the biggest barrier people face when accessing public services today? Most of people, 35% thinks that this is related to complex procedures. 30% thinks that this is related to limited digital access. There are too many documents, 15% thinks about it, long waiting times and lack of information have 10%. Thank you. And the question two, what action would have the greatest impact on improving public service delivery? Okay, 30% thinks that it is the simplifying procedures and requirements uh, have the greatest impact. And then expanding digital services and designing services around citizens' life events have the same percentage. Improving data sharing across agencies is 70%, and strengthening frontline support and assistance have 9%. Thank you. These results provide a useful starting point for our discussion and highlight some of the priorities that we will explore with our speakers. Now I would like to open the floor for our panel discussions. We will have two rounds of questions, so two questions for each speaker, and after the panel discussion, of course, the participants will be able to have the questions, and the speakers will be delighted to answer your questions. Okay, let me start with round one, which is related to understanding and simplifying complexity. I would start with Mr. Wu Weiying. So the question one for you is, what are the most common sources of complexity in public service delivery, and what practical steps can governments take to eliminate unnecessary procedures, requirements, and approvals? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna. Just checking this is working. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon. I just want to thank the government of Georgia, the people of Georgia, and the UN for having me. I'm here today in my capacity as the CEO of a non-profit organization that works with governments around the world, also as a former public servant in the government of Singapore. So just before I start out, I just wanted to take the time to introduce conceptually. Maybe I can show the slide, yep. Just a very quick framing that might be useful for our sessions, but as our moderators and hosts have said, this is an interactive session. So please do build on this framework and give me your views as well. We can use that perhaps as a way to structure some of our conversations. So the survey before this was useful. I think many people talked about complex procedures. So I want to ask the question, which I've got on the slide up there, which is, why are public processes complex? One of the heads of civil service in Singapore told me a long time ago when I was much younger that government has become more complex, the environment has become more complex. So in the past, where a simple tool like a knife might have sufficed, now you might need a more complex tool like a Swiss Army knife, because the demands of government, the needs of government have changed. And therefore, sometimes, and it might surprise some of us, but maybe not many, that some complexity, some friction is sometimes useful for the design and delivery of public services. But in what kinds of cases and how? So just looking here at four types. The first type I'd just like to talk about is justified due diligence, and where there are complex policy issues, climate change, demographics, AI, where decisions carry a lot of weight and where decisions can't be easily rolled back. It might justify a more complex, more involved decision-making process involving more research, more stakeholder consultation, more deliberation to ensure that decisions are made in a good way. So that's the first type of complexity that might be justified when the environment calls for it. The second type of complexity that we deal with is system accountability. As we've mentioned, there are many cases where citizens are asked to make decisions or services are provided in areas that are maybe emotionally heavy or involve perhaps complex decisions on the part of the citizen themselves. So for example, decisions around lasting power of attorney, living wills, organ donation, and also opt-in, opt-out type situations where citizens are deciding which public pension scheme to enroll for, where citizens might face difficulties, challenges, or even regrets after signing up for a specific option. So in those cases, it might justify having slightly more complex procedures at the service delivery stage to support citizens in thinking through, or users in thinking through, what is the best option for them, in having due appeal processes for cases that fall through the cracks, or other types of cases, just to make sure that due delivery is done and processes are served. But of course, you have a lot of other cases where complexity may not be so justified, where the environment is simple, where you don't need such a complex tool to deal with situations. And this also can occur in cases where there's a lot of decision. Maybe, as Anna said earlier, a lot of times it's good intentions. I think most of us as public servants, we don't set out to make life difficult for citizens. But sometimes public agencies want to be involved in a process. They want to be represented. They want to have a representative in the committee. And different ministries come with different agendas, different concerns. So this can lead to duplication. It can lead to some processes that maybe have to have lengthy approvals from different places that don't fit the needs of the situation. So in those cases, you might take a long time to make a decision. And finally, the fourth type will be administrative bloat. You mentioned too many forms up there as a key example of that. Sometimes, of course, forms might be useful at times, but duplicate forms asking for the same type of information on multiple occasions, that might not be so justified. Okay, so those four types of framings and different types of complexity that may or may not be useful at different times. So just going on very quickly then to the second part of the question, which is on practical steps. So our two panelists are going to talk a lot about their knowledge in both digital and non-digital ways of streamlining, improving public services. I thought, just because I have the disadvantage of being the first speaker, I thought I might talk a little bit about some of the principles that have been useful to us. The first principle is really about burden shifting, about making sure that the risks and burdens of a public service fall on those who are most suited or should be bearing those risks and burdens. I'll give you an example of that. Sometimes when we simplify public processes, we're not reducing the total amount of work, but we're shifting it from one agency to another, or we're shifting it maybe from the government to the people. Now, is that always? I mean, think about a supermarket checkout counter. This is my favorite pet peeve in Singapore. You used to have people to help you bag your groceries. Now you do everything yourself. You scan your groceries yourself. So from the supermarket's point of view, it's a lot more productive. From my point of view, I have a lot more work to do. And it might be justified. So now, is it justified for me to do that extra work? Now, that's up for debate, right? But the fact is, there's some burden shifting going on. There's some load shifting going on. There's an example here I'd like to point out just very quickly from, and these examples are all not meant as a criticism of any country. In fact, these are all cases where the country government has recovered very well from a service lapse, and they are no country is perfect. Right, so this first example is called robo-debt. And essentially, if you can think about it this way, governments provide social assistance, payments to citizens. These are generally low-income citizens. And sometimes there are overpayments, where when the citizen gets a job, for example, and the amount of social assistance is supposed to fall. So in those cases, the government will want to claw back the excess social security or social service payments made to the citizen. So how do you do that? In the previous workflow, there were case officers who would go to each person, check their income, see whether they were overpaid, and if so, raise a debt and say, now you owe the government this much, you have to repay this excess because you got a job and you're getting more income now. They replaced this with a system that used automatic algorithm matching, looking at smoothing out of average income, matching that, and using that to derive and see whether they think a citizen has a debt. So it was a derived formula, and if they thought you had a debt, they just sent you a recovery notice and said, you owe the government this much, pay up. And the onus was then on you as a citizen to disprove that debt. Right? So that shifted the cognitive load and the compliance burden from the government, which had to verify the debt, to the citizen, who now has to organize pay slips and income documents to go and prove that the government is wrong. Okay, so that's a very simple example of how sometimes burden shifting can happen. And of course, this was later removed. Anna, you mentioned how this burden generally falls sometimes on the most vulnerable groups. So in this particular case, that was the case. Recipients of social assistance were being asked to do things that they really didn't have the time or the energy to do. Okay, then we'll move on to the next one. I'll be quick, which is my next example is really from Singapore. So thank you. Um, which is from Singapore. Now, in Singapore, for public transport, we use these cash cards. We tap the cash cards on the gantries and buses and in MRT trains, subway trains, and so again, Singapore is generally known as a positive example of public service simplification, but no country is perfect. So I don't mean to say that every service is like this in Singapore, but there was a reform called Simply Go, where the government tried to make things more smooth and easier for citizens by having these cash cards all linked to a single back-end system that will make it easier for citizens to use different ways to top up the cash cards and also provide more app services. The challenge was that because of limitations of the technology, citizens were not able to see their fare card balance, so not able to see how much money they had in their card, and not able to see how much the fare was that was deducted from their card. And the government underestimated how useful and important this was to citizens, especially older users who wanted to know and wanted to make sure that they won't be overcharged. And there was a surprisingly huge backlash against that. The government, to its credit, realized in time, rolled back the changes. Now, what is this a so-called failure of? Right, the idea is that we want to consult citizens at upstream when designing service simplifications. But in this particular case, the government did consult citizens. So citizens were consulted, there were feedback groups, and they got this feedback. So they knew that people didn't like it. But the challenge then as a service designer is when do you listen to the feedback? When do you can't please everyone, right? So if you get feedback, how much is enough for you to make a change to your service and under what circumstances? So that's a complex question I hope we can explore together within the time. And finally, and I'll stop after this one, the third example is from Rwanda, which is in Irembo Gov. So this is again a service simplification process of digital services. So that's very similar to what some of our friends are doing. But in this particular case, they engaged a lot of support officers and change management officers to support people in learning about the new services, using the new services. So what that meant is that change management is really important. For every process simplification, deliberate change management strategy is going to be important to make sure that people are comfortable with and know how to use and trust the new system. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for your interesting intervention. As you mentioned, the complexity could be related to different reasons. And it could be related to due diligence, as you have mentioned, accountability, decision threat, and administrative load. Of course, the states, countries would like to have the service delivery, but sometimes they are not ready to simplify the procedures because they feel insecure. But of course, we should always remember that behind these services there are people. And thank you for sharing the example of Singapore and the main points that when we are working on service delivery, we should also consult with people what they need. So thank you for your intervention. Now I will move to Mr. Salim with the question, how can governments ensure that digital transformation leads to simpler services rather than merely digitizing existing bureaucratic processes? Yes, please display the slides.
Well, it's yeah. Many people have heard about Murphy's laws, and one of the laws of Murphy is by the time you try to make your project better, it is much worse than you started with. This is the risk and the threat of really trying to digitize, trying to do public services and things. We think we have to, we know the solution, we know what we have to do. But how to do it, that's the issue I would like to raise here. So if you kindly allow me to, um, that's the question. And what I will do, I'm not going to explain those. I'm sure you are all professional, educated, have experience, and you know all these things. I've listed 8 things that that could answer to the question. What my intake here, my contribution here is to say what makes this right or wrong, how we can secure the process and make them work. We know the solution, but very often we start one way and we end in a completely different and therefore worse. For example, the redesign the procedures, enterprise architecture, and business process re-engineering, trying to find what is a better way of doing things. Forget about digital. We are not talking about digital now. Just what is the process? Can we make it simpler? And the second, adopt a citizen-centered. So this process has to be shifted from focused on the government employee, on the government to the citizen, and where the government is the client of the citizen, and not the citizen is the client of. And thirdly, apply the once only, one-stop shop. There are many names to this process. Is that when you enter your ID, national ID, to renew your license, you don't have to enter it again for the police to get the certificate that you don't have any hanging over whatever it is, and things like this. And so with one identification, you are well secured, then you are allowed to access any of the government public services. And number 4, establish a digital by default, but not digital only services. And this is a concept many consultants, I remember I had a big discussion with a consultant from Price Water at some time in Dubai a few years ago. He insisted that it should be digital by design. And in that particular case, I insisted that it's digital by default. Now, the difference between those two, it's not like either you are on this side or that side. Sometimes you have to be wise enough to choose which one you deal with. And therefore, we don't design the process, the public services. We don't design it, and with our thinking is digital. What's the best way of doing what we are doing manually, for example, to do it into digital? And this is what I refer to here, not digital only services. So we're not talking about digital only services. We are talking about the digital by default. So digital practices should be the normal way, the initial way of thinking and behavior, not something we are learning to adapt to replace the old one. This needs a generation change management, as you said. But this change management, unfortunately, I have seen in a couple of countries, from Libya to somewhere in Africa, somewhere else, they handle the change management as a rigid something framework, and you do it ABCD workshop, ABCD, etc., and that's it. This is completely wrong. This is misleading. So, and create integrated and one-stop government platforms. And if you like, it's not one-stop, it's not a once, like you do it at, sometimes a public service, and most of the time, the public service needs addressing or interacting with several government platforms, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Security, the economics, whatever it is. Now, the interlinking between those platforms should be completely transparent to the customer. The customer thinks that all these platforms is one platform. And this is a tricky, technically speaking now. This is tricky because once you try to do it without proper technological design, then you end up completely breaking the things, completely messing up that. So this is a risk also. And number 7 is, well, 6, use feedback to improve, as you might know, important. Reform, I'm glad I'm glad, Anna, that at the start of this workshop you had this exercise. I think this is really good. It's like of a feedback, but prior feedback instead of not feedback, feed forward. So and laws and administrative culture. Many countries they get consultants. I need cyber legislation. We have to provide to the ministry, to the parliament, etc. Copy and paste and modify, copy and paste, which is nothing wrong with this. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. But we are missing here a very crucial item, which is culture, the way we think, the people, the way we think, the way we behave. I remember in one country about 10 years ago, without naming that country. It's a Muslim country. And the Statistics Bureau, the International Statistics Bureau, sent a template for the census. So one of the questions was, what's the gender? Male, female, or other? Now, we see this very often, we don't think of it, but that raised a critical issue between that consultant firm, a major one, one of the four, and that country. How dare you suggest this? Imagine if we are sending this, that means we are indirectly, the government are saying it doesn't matter if you think of other, whatever it is that other is. This is a very simple case. Imagine how much serious such cases would appear when we try to put legislation. And UNESCO is doing a very hard work and good work so far about developing the ethics and culture of AI integration. We just don't take AI as is. We have to think of that. And build capacity and accountability, of course, we need that. But look at this. I'm concerned here about how we can make, we know these are example, 8 things that we can answer the question. But my concern is not what we should do. Every one of you, I'm sure you know and you agree that we should do this. And there are 100 ways of doing. We can get experts and technical people and legal issues to try to develop those. But this is not enough. Like if you are building a house, you do not get the people who bring the glass and people who bring the stone and the cement and people who make the painting and the furniture and telling them do this according to this map or this schedule or this whatever. They have to work in unison. They have to be a virtually one company or something. So this is these 8 actions, as you see, there should be consideration to implementation, finding a way of doing these actively in real time. Real time means update. You have to change very often. It's not like a cookbook recipe, do this, do that, and etc. And finally, actions have to be planned in a timeline, that is to minimize risks of etc. And lack of resources, careful examination to prioritize very often because of we don't have enough money. We have to change this, we have to do that. Of course, we have to be pragmatic and we have to be realistic. If we don't have the money for this, let's postpone it. But don't say let's postpone it because of the lack of money. Postpone it after you make sure that its postponement doesn't affect the ones you are doing or something. And I think it is about what, when, and how. And it's just, I'm concluding here. It's important to remember I think this is a key principle. Digitize bureaucracy, do not digitize, don't look at the bureaucracy and the paper and how things do. Okay, and then that's what you have to do. You have to digitize not what's going on. You have to change that, and then whatever is left, you can digitize it. Because if you do the first one step, which is like filter, you are brewing your coffee, and you have the filter. You put coffee mixed with God knows what other spices and things like that. You decide what you like to filter, what is not desired. Once you do this, then whatever is left, you can design. Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting intervention. I totally agree that it's very important that in the digital era, of course, digitalization is very important, but how to make it's another question that, and the countries should be ready to digitalize the services, but of course, digitize by default and but not digitize the bureaucracy. Thank you. Now I will move with our third speaker, Mr. Chair. How can governments use both digital and non-digital innovative solutions and tools to help simplify service procedures? Please.
Thank you very much for this question. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm from Cambodia. You know that Cambodia never have a good reputation on provide the good digital public service. But why we come and share today? Because I can tell you, the last 3 years we did a big change in the country on the digital public service, and we did export the digital public service technology to other countries as well. After my minister, he joined the government and lead the digital transformation, and our team did join the government, and our team got around 20 years experience in doing business process re-engineering for the public service in the government. So, I will share you how we apply this in Cambodia, how we change the public service, how we make it seamless. If you talk about the digital channel and non-digital channel, we need both. So when we start this, we make it very simple. We define the SLA, how the government should provide the public service. So we've got 3 SLA. The first SLA we call 1 minute SLA. You need to let the citizen request the public service digitally, receive it within 1 minute. The second SLA is 1 hour SLA. And the third SLA is 1 day SLA. It means request and receive must happen at the same day. So how can we do that? In order to do that, you need to bring everything into the digital world. But when you start provide the digital public service, you cannot have everything on the digital world on the first day, because everything needs a human interaction. People need to travel to create those documents. So, for us, what we do first is we need to earn, to collect, to bring the digital assets to our citizens first. Make sure all the non-digital public service has the result and put it on the verified credential platform and allow the citizen to reuse it anytime that they want. A lot of countries around the world, they try to do something they call business process re-engineering. But one thing that you can never miss is the requirement of the document. You always need that. When it comes to this problem, it's really hard, because to get one public service, you need to fill in those requirements, and it takes you a lot of time. This is how people had the most when they had to fill in repetitive information, and when they have to bring the information to the government while the government already know those information. So to make it simple, I will give you one example how Cambodian did this. So last time, if one Cambodian citizen want to request to renew a driver license, it takes them a few days to get the result. Why? Because in order to request to renew a driver license, first, you need to go and fill in your information, your personal information that the government already know. Second, you have to find your old driving license. If you lose it, you have to find somewhere and bring it with you, and to make sure it's authentic, notarized or legalized by the government. If you bring those documents, it's not legalized, you have a problem. Third, you have to check your health. But if you go to their public service, maybe it's busy, you have to wait and you cannot have your health check at the same day. So this requirement bring you a very painful experience. But today, if a citizen want to request for a driver license, we provide the 1 minute SLA. So how can we achieve the 1 minute SLA and transform from a few days of the public service to receive result to a 1 minute SLA? We create a super app. You can see here. The citizen, to identify themselves, they can log on using the bank identity. So the government doesn't have to do anything. The citizen just log on to the system using their bank identity. Bank identity is accurate. When you log on, the government know who you are. They don't need you to do anything first. Second, when we issue the driver license, we issue driver license on the verifiable credential platform that got the data exchange feature. It is a card, got a QR code inside. The citizen can scan it and upload it, become their digital assets. It's like in their wallet, they will have a driver license. So the second requirement is tick. EKYC, driver license, tick. Third, when they go to the Ministry of Health, whenever they got their health check, they got a verifiable credential on the health check as well. So then in their digital wallet, they got 3 items: EKYC, digital driver license, and digital health checks. So they asked the AI, I want to renew my driver license. What should I do? This super app tells them that in order to renew the driver license, you need 3 information: EKYC, old driver license, and your health certificate. But you got all in your wallet. So are you sure you want to submit for it? Or then just do 1 click. Click submit. Within, I think, 5 seconds, they got a new driver license and add it to their digital wallet immediately. So in Cambodia now, we reach to 1 minute SLA because we try to earn one by one every certificate and put it into our citizen digital wallet. It makes our public service become personalized and proactive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your experience. Digital wallet, super app, as you call it. Now I will move to round 2, and I would like to ask the speakers to have the short answers for the sake of time. I would like Mr. Salim to answer the following question. How can governments reduce administrative burdens while maintaining accountability and transparency?
Yeah. Okay. How can we reduce the administrative burdens? Again, I list here 8 things. I'm not going to go through them and bore you with more description. I'm sure you know that. It's simply first, then digitize second, apply risk-based. That's important. We have to find rules that decide what risks are and to counter them before preventive security, I would say, if I say implement one. Transparency. This is very, and my colleague also mentioned earlier, and it's transparency, accountability is important, and automate routine that task, etc. I would like to reach just the conclusion so as to save time. That's why I'm reform laws and administrative culture. That's again important. Strengthen accountability through better performance measurements. We have to know how to measure. One way of imagine that this survey that we had at the beginning today, if ministries in the government, they run this periodically, once every month or something, asking about Did you have any problems, any things like that? Without knowing the employees will answer, then that's one way for them to feel that they are accountable. So they make sure that they don't make mistakes intentionally or unintentionally. Engage citizens and business, etc. But this is what I would really to focus on. You implement for now and plan for the update. Very often we think that once we do a public service and implement it, we take a big sigh and go for a beer or a coffee and say, I have done the job. This is wrong. Your job just started after you finish. This is very important. Unfortunately, this is how many governments fail. After 1 or 2 years of digital transformation, they find themselves they are back to square one, even worse. So you have to embed the sustainability not in maintaining the operation, but also maintaining the trust, maintaining the accountability, etc. And the blue one, I'm just using colors for ease of reading, not any significance at all. Get citizens at some time proactive in sustaining the synergy services, institutionalizing trust and support. So normally the trust and support is the responsibility of the government. Unfortunately, many governments who do the digital transformation and God knows I've seen in over 60 developing countries, they take it as their only responsibility only for them, for the proper government office who does that. They manage the job, whether they do it well or not, or etc. That's another issue. But this, to me, I think is misleading. We don't have to be a developed country like France or Germany or etc. or Canada in order to tell our citizens, come and join us. We have to have trust and belief in our citizens. Well, of course, I don't say that just from this political party, get me 10 people and this, etc. But allow everybody who is capable, irrespective his position in the society or government, etc., to be responsible for the trust, to encourage the trust. And it can start very simple. He could start affecting the people around him. Why this is, if the driving license survey tells you that this is not good, you have to believe it. It's good because of, as you just mentioned, forgive my, I'm turning back my back on you, I'm sorry. Yeah. And finally, the enhanced community partnership. We talk a lot about partnerships, and we heard Mr. Lee, the Undersecretary, this morning, he said that partnership is important as well, innovation and inclusion. But partnership, you cannot, partnership is like some people, they decide to get engaged or married. Partnership, you have to look for the partner who really can match your interest and you can match his or her interest, or in this case, organizations. So there are certain regulations, conditions. Not any partnership will do, just sign an MOU, exchange visits, etc. That's a cancer, that's a killing for any of the government work for development. So partnership, we have to review it in a more subjective and exact way to do that. And finally, it's about seriousness and trust. And if I may, just the key principle here, reduce the paperwork, not the accountability. Accountability is more than the paperwork. Very often, reduce the paperwork, period, stop. And they don't think of accountability. This is another version of what we call a cancer in government work, in public services. And remove unnecessary procedures, not necessary safeguards. Well, you can think of it. I'll tell you, I'm not just because of time, but this is, if you think of this statement, and every time I think of this statement, I feel that there are hidden problems that we don't see it at face right away. So this is important. Finally, and this is
Thank you.
okay. Yeah, this is the takeaway, the last one.
Uh,
I'm not going to say it, just
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Of course, when we are talking about simplifying procedures, our aim is to make the life of citizens easy. But of course, we should not forget that accountability and trust in people is very important. So it is very interlinked, and while we are simplifying the procedures, we should also maintain accountability and make and ensure the trust by making people participate in the reform procedures. Thank you. Now I will move to another question. Mr. Chair, how can governments improve coordination and information sharing across agencies to make services simpler and more seamless for users? Please.
Thank you very much. You know that when our team joined the government and we don't have any legacy, we try to learn the experience all around the world. We see that there are many developed countries, they are very good into like data interoperability, but many problem is not resolved. For example, like in US, right now US got a big problem when one citizen want to bring their health record from one state to another. And the system is designed by Oracle company. And until today, Oracle cannot solve this problem. It's a big problem in US right now. And the world keep, repeating, follow the same rule, do data exchange through the interoperability framework. For me, data exchange through interoperability framework is very good on the paper, but it's not good in the practice. If it's good on the practice, all the hospitals in US, they will share the data. So when Cambodia start doing this job, we try to see from data architect perspective. We don't introduce data exchange interoperability anymore. We don't do that in Cambodia. When you produce a new system, we are not try asking you to comply to interoperability framework. If you heard about this, you feel like, why? It's a bit strange. In Cambodia, we think that verifiable credential is the solution. If the citizen, they own what belongs to them, and they can take care of it, and they can use it digitally whenever they want, it's enough. We don't need the government interoperability system. For example, if I'm a citizen, I got my land title, I got my driver license, I got my national ID card, I got all my certificate, I got my check report in my phone. I can print it and use it anytime without government interaction. Every public service that I request, I can always use it legally. So why the government need interoperability? Because the citizen got enough information in their hand and they can use it anytime. For example, if I want to request for any public service, most of the time they ask about my identity information. They need me to provide my high school certificate. They need me to provide my driver license. They need me to provide my land title. If I got everything in my hand already, we won't need interoperability to other government system. This is how we deploy in Cambodia. Right now in Cambodia, we managed to achieve 1 minute SLA in many public service because whenever the citizen want to request for a public service, they got all requirement document in their digital wallet. And this digital wallet document is encrypted and managed by the citizen. Only the citizen give the consent, then they can use it. By doing this, the government doesn't have to store all the data and put it online, which is bring a big problem on the security breach. Because every document belongs to citizen, it's encrypted, and the key is handled by the citizen, embedded into the citizen SIM card, so no one can hack it. So if you ask me, I would not recommend to move with what the world used to repeat on the interoperability framework, that you require all the new software to adopt with that, and no one ever listen to you. Extract those documents and send to the citizen, allow citizen to use it whenever they want, so they don't need to fill in the information, and the AI is there to help them, but the AI cannot breach the government security because the AI can only access to the digital asset of one person only in the country. Thank you very much.
For your answer. Of course, there are many institutions, many ministries, state agencies involved in public service delivery, and the coordination is very effective. And AI and digitalization is one of the effective tools to coordinate this service delivery systems, procedures, and to make this process simpler. Now I have the final question for Mr. Wu. Of course, we are talking about how to make the procedures simpler, but how we can measure, what are the indicators or measures should governments use to assess whether public services are becoming simpler, faster, and easier for people to access?
Okay, thank you. I'll just quickly run through a few points. I'm happy to discuss this more if anyone, but I don't want to take up so much time. So the first thing is that there are some basic principles of indicator design and measurement. I think most of us will be familiar in this room as professionals. Don't just look at activities, look at outcomes and outputs. Be careful about gaming or causing adverse impacts based on the types of indicators that are being chosen, because people sometimes game indicators and use the data that you already have or that you can get easily. So there's some basic principles, hygiene factors of measurement. But I just wanted to focus very quickly on why we measure. So we don't measure for the sake of measuring, right? We measure because we want to improve things, we want to know what's going on, whether the services are working. What I would focus on is not the individual indicators, but how they are used, not as a checklist of individual indicators to optimize, but building the indicators together into a logic model that allows the service owner to be able to see how environmental factors and inputs are linked with activities and actions that are then linked with intermediate outputs and then final outcomes for citizens. So in the Simply Go example, this could be, environmental outcomes could be, for example, the public transport demand, total passenger load. Inputs could be things like budget, human resources, time. The activities could be things like system rollout, app deployment. Outputs could be things like number of citizens onboarded, the uptake and things like that. And then the maybe things like reduction in service time or in top-up time for fare cards. And then finally, outputs and things like citizen satisfaction in public services or public transport as a result of this new system. So you work this together into a logic model that will allow the service user to see whether the service was working and at which point it breaks down if it's not working well. So is it breaking down at the activities to output stage? Is it breaking down at the budget not being translated well into activities? And then you sort of use that to improve things. And this is the theory, of course. The practice is more complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, since we are running out of time, I would like to use 10 minutes for the Q&A session. So please briefly introduce yourself and keep your question concise so that we can hear from as many participants as possible. Now I open the floor for the questions. So if anyone would like to ask, please. Yes.
Salam, je suis Dobish. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I've got a question related to maybe once only principle, but also when you ask the question about how to switch from one day or a few days long service delivery process, my instant answer was maybe through interoperability, and suddenly you switched it absolutely differently. Because how you um, in a wallet, you introduced single, let's call it like transactional service. By itself, it's not transactional, but there are some services and its business processes that require multiple institutions and decision-making processes within one service, which includes another sub-services. There should be already ID present, there should be criminal record present, and so it's like sub-services that another service, for example, social status or anything, is related on multiple services. So at that level, just individual service of, for example, ID card becomes kind of a transactional for this huger service. So when you ask how, my answer also was interoperability, because probably it can be also proactively generated in the data upon request. So once the request is there, then data kind of takes all the information and straight ahead at least the paper is ready by itself, but you kind of changed it. And then I will relate it this one, if it's clear, or I can simplify it better, because it can be institutions that take few institutions to give the social status and the social benefits that requires few more service to be present. But when it comes to once only principle, practices have shown that sometimes, including criminal record, once it's delivered, it can change. It could have been 0 and then appeared, or it was present once and through the time it was demolished, cancelled, whatever. So how would you describe any of you? I am addressing to any of you. So how would you see this? How can this once only principle can work better? And if it works in a way perfectly and fully? Thank you.
Yes, let me start first because I try to change the perception from use interoperability to the we call citizen registry. So if you talk about the one only principle or the whole government approach, it's still there. But the question is that should the government own and manage citizen data, or you allow citizen to own and manage your data? For example, I take one example, a case in US. Let's say you got your health record. You go to one hospital, you go to one hospital, you go to one hospital. 3 hospitals own, control your health record. When you go to the hospital number 4, the first architecture, interoperability, I name it directly like X-Road from Estonia. You have to request the data from the first 3 hospitals. Then you collect it and let them send to the 4th hospital. If one of the hospital not agree with you, or they do process a bit slow, you cannot get your data. The second approach is citizen registry. So we say we don't want that hospital to manage citizen data. They can own it, they can store it, but every time there is the citizen data, they need to synchronize to citizen registry where the citizen hold the record and then can manage it whenever they want. So by doing this, when you go to the first hospital, it extract data stored on your registry. You go to the second hospital, it extract data stored on your wallet. You go to the third hospital, it extract data stored on your wallet. So when you go to the 4th hospital, you don't even have to talk with those first 3 hospitals. You don't need them. You just give the consent and share it straight away. And the government should facilitate that. This is how we do it in Cambodia. Because if we got agreement from the hospital, it's not easy. So now in Cambodia, we got what we call health. So now in Cambodia, we designed something we call health enterprise architecture. So we believe that many hospitals open and become bankrupt. And our citizens not stay with them, and our citizens lose those data. So what we say is that, okay, every hospital, you can store and manage my citizen data, but you have to synchronize, upload it to the health EA. And this health EA, every citizen own a key related to their data, and they can use it anytime. So in Cambodia, our citizens own their full health record. And whenever they go, they can give this record to anyone whenever they want. And if those hospitals become bankrupt or shut down, it doesn't matter. This is how we do it in Cambodia. Yeah, I think there's a detail inside because we spent honestly. I started my first job with Google 2006. I'm ex-Microsoft. We have Singapore government and the government around the world. I see how Accenture design a system to help each country, and Cambodia doesn't have a lot of money, so we must have a way to deal it different way. And right now we promote one solution called verifiable credential that allow to cook all data and store with the citizen wallet. I can go into that later. And I will share this solution to many countries around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we will take another question. If anyone is willing to question. Okay. Yes, sure. If you would like to reply,
Yeah, I have a nine-word answer.
please use the mic.
Very short one. What you described um, is is a paradise for knowledge engineering actors. You have lots of engineering hospital 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't count words, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then what's the machine learning is the only up to date now is the only solution to such a case where the machine learning together with the necessary platform will identify sources of information of the patient records, each separately, and the requirements of the owners to share. That's step number one. On the other hand, step number two is a networking mechanism where, and this is where AI can be helpful, is that if you request some record, so this application, this GenAI application platform will look at this knowledge base that is created, that one, and very quickly identifies where, what are the conditions, what can be done, who to contact, etc. I think this is the normal way to handle this. Step further for tomorrow is that the user, the patient or doctor, when he Googles where Salim has, etc., he would have, instead, he would know that go contact this hospital, etc., etc. But that, in the future, he would say, okay, do you want? Click yes. Then automatically verify whether I am eligible to qualify and the payment, etc. So this is the, I think, the ultimate solution to this, if I may. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. One more round of questions. Yeah, please.
I would also like Diana Puzic from the European Institute of Public Administration, Maastricht, the Netherlands. I would also probably go along like Tamta did on the interoperability. We'll reach out to you, sir, later on. But on the user, on testing solutions with users, Mr. Neng, that you said, and also when is it then time to listen to the focus groups and basically to adapt accordingly? That would be one question that I would be genuinely interested in. And to Mr. I don't see, Zagubi, Salim, yeah. Then also on the culture. And certainly culture, organizational culture, country culture needs to be preserved, but also at some point changed. If you agree with that, and what would be your 2 cents on that? Thank you.
Thanks so much. So this is a really difficult question, as you would know. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I won't trivialize your question by pretending there's one, but I will say that there are different ways that you can judge. The first, I guess, is what is the risk? What is the downside? So what's at stake if something goes wrong? Where is the burden of proof? So if not listening to the feedback could produce an extremely a negative outcome that you don't want, then the second option is whether you can test, whether you can pilot, whether you can test, whether you can experiment. Because that to me sounds like a more complex policy environment. And in a complex policy environment where we can't predict outcomes, we might want to test first. Not all governments have the luxury of testing. There might be political consequences for making mistakes in a test, for example. And I would say that there are really no good answers to that. I think these are things that we face quite often. I think many countries face. And I would say that, but I would offer that as a counterpoint to the common wisdom that we should check with the public. Because I think most of us want to, and we do. So we do a lot of focus group discussions, we do a lot of feedback rounds. Then the question is, what do you do with the information, especially when it conflicts, especially when you see a trade-off and you think, well, there's a small vocal group of minority of people who are voicing this concern, but it's a small vocal minority. Do I override the system designed to accommodate this group? Do I have two channels? Do I design the policy differently or the service differently to accommodate both groups? Do I set an appeal process after the group so that people who are not satisfied with the outcome can appeal? Is that cost worth it rather than engineering a different process up front? So I think there are different decisions to make.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll address the culture issue. And you just reminded me of, I love civilizations and culture and things. So I was visiting Siem Reap, the famous city of yeah, Angelina Jolie's temple. And and visited a temple there, a live temple. And I met a young man, a Buddhist monk with the orange dress, having a laptop, an apple in his hand. Oh my God. Do you speak English? He spoke good, fairly good English. So we sat down to have tea together. I asked him after talking about certain things and about Buddhism and etc. and technology and where we are heading. I asked him, are you as a person reconciling technology and culture? And if so, personally, because you have been lucky and lived somewhere in, I don't know, England, the States, or whatever, or do you represent that this is the future that you should believe? That's the question. And the answer was very simple. He smiled and declined back, said, drink your tea, my friend, drink your tea, because technology has been always and will always be here. Whether we have iPhone or not, whether we have iPad, laptop, etc. It's the question how much we believe inside that new way of living, quote unquote, technology is affecting our state of mind and culture. So and this is good for the people as well as for the person. The summary of this, how does it come in this case, is that I believe that culture, we cannot use our iPhones, whether our kids or anybody, or a farmer in the West Bengal, for example, who barely knows, but she or she has a phone, they cannot separate or create a barrier between this device or this technology with what they are used to do, the culture. They are trying to reconcile those two. So this reconciliation is, I think, is the key factor. I hope I made some answer, but thank you.
Thank you. We will take one last question if there anyone willing to ask the question. No? Okay, then I will have one final question for each speaker, and I would like to ask to make the answer for 1 minute. If you could recommend just one action that governments should prioritize to make public services simpler, faster, and easier for people to access, what would it be? Just one action, please.
Oh dear. Okay, I'm sorry to be contrary. I would say be holistic. I would say be holistic. I know that people are after silver bullet actions and very quick things, but I think the nature of public service is inherently complex. I think we do need to look at culture, we need to look at change management, look at process. And I would hope that people don't approach this from a perspective which is, just let me see how I can use MBA style business process re-engineering to slice off bits of a process so that it looks prettier on paper, because that might ignore a lot of other things. It's not that it's not a useful tool, it is a useful tool, but that just government is more complex.
Well, I think very simply, some of you might be surprised. My advice to the government is choose the right people and trust them. Unfortunately, many governments in the world, even in the United States, they don't use the right people for the right thing because other considerations are done. The same thing in developing in poor countries. So you are talking about digitization, about etc. You need well-trained people and loyal to their government, to their country, and a government that does not harass them and run after them. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, I'm the last person. So for me, I think the key takeaway that I would give for the government is that stop giving the homework and the problem to the citizen by allowing the citizen to manage all the paper that the government give to them and need to legalize and notarize them every time they need to use it. Let the citizen got a digital copy, can print and use it whenever they want without government stamp, locally and globally around the world. There's only one ticket. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all of you and the audience for taking part in our session. I would briefly summarize what we have discussed. So, firstly, simplifying public services is not only about efficiency, it's about making government more accessible, inclusive, trustful, and responsive to people's needs. Second, digital transformation alone does not guarantee simplification. Governments must redesign processes before digitizing them and ensure that technology improves the user experience rather than replicating existing complexity. Stronger coordination, data sharing, and whole of government approaches are essential to reducing fragmentation and creating seamless service experiences. And finally, governments need to measure success from the perspective of users by focusing on accessibility, ease of use, processing times, user satisfaction, and service outcomes. Today's discussion reminded us that reducing procedural complexity is not a one-time exercise. It requires continuous review, innovation, and commitment to putting people at the center of public service delivery. I would like once again to thank you all of you for participating in our session. Thank you very much. And now we have the coffee break for 20 minutes, and then we will move on with session 2 on integrated public services. Thank you very much.